Hi Megan, thanks for having me on your blog to talk about my debut novel, Founder. My name is Laura Long, and I'm excited about being here. This is my first video blog, so here we go. Um, I grew up in a very small town in Southern California, very close to Palm Springs, which is a kind of playground for the wealthy people that live in Los Angeles and older celebrity types. So I have lived in California my entire life, except for a brief stint where I moved to Denver, Colorado, and I realized that visiting snow and living in snow are two very different things. And my love affair with Colorado ended badly, and I moved back to California, and I've been here ever since. And now I live in Northern California in San Jose. Well, I worked for an airline for about 10 years, and then luckily enough, my husband makes enough money that I was able to quit my job to raise our three little girls. So now I'm a full-time mom as well as being a writer. I really actually miss my job. I loved working for an airline. I loved being able to hop on a plane just on a whim. I did it quite often, quite frequently. And my husband and I still love to travel as much as we can. We have a trip in the works next year to visit London again. I absolutely love London, and so I'm very excited about that. I never actually planned on being a writer. My parents encouraged me to write. I dedicated my first book to them because they did actually pester me all the time to write a book. I had professors in college that encouraged me. They loved my writing and they thought I should pursue it. But really, I always enjoyed writing more situational type of things that fit in a blog post or in journal entries, not really a book-sized, book length type of story. I also write to friends quite frequently that don't live close to me. I guess you would call them pen pals. And they would say that I write very long emails to them filled with anecdotes and things that happen, true life type of things. And I've done this forever, I write every single day. I think it's really important to write every single day, and I don't think it's important that you write fictional things or stories or make up things. I think you just need to hone your writing skills through writing and find your voice. I think that's very important. I got my idea for Founder the same way I think a lot of writers get their ideas, through a dream. So my mother is very interested in genealogical work. She does a lot of work in our family genealogy, and she doesn't know very much about her father's side of the family. And a couple of years ago, she discovered that she had an Aunt Marion that was still alive, her father's sister, and she lived actually only about an hour away from my mom. And she went to go visit her, and her name was Marion. She wasn't a very nice older woman. She was actually very angry. She didn't really like my mother visiting her, and she ended up dying about a week after my mom discovered she was alive. Well, we ended up with all of her things, all of her belongings, because she didn't have any family or anything to sort of take over her affairs. And when we got to her house, we discovered she was a hoarder. She had lots and lots of things, and it took a lot of sorting and organizing and cleaning, and it was just awful. But while we were doing all of that, we discovered some pretty shocking things about her life. I think that a lot of times when we think about our relatives, we hope that they fought for things that were right, for like civil rights, and kind of fought against evil things and evil thoughts. And it's rather embarrassing when you find out that they were actually part of the problem. Well, Marion was a white supremacist, and in the 1930s and 40s, she traveled with her brothers and some other gentlemen down to Ecuador, to the Amazon jungle, and they tried to form a colony down there of like-minded white supremacist people. It ultimately failed, and she returned to the States, but the story was picked up by the tabloids of the time and sensationalized, and that is pretty much the basis of my story Founder. I had a dream about a year ago I woke up from this very vivid dream where Marta, my main character, had been running through the Amazon jungle, and she came upon her hut and she sat down to write a letter asking for help. And the dream was so vivid that I woke up and started writing it down on a sketch pad next to my bed. And I called my friend Elaine and I told her about this dream, and she encouraged me to continue writing down my thoughts, which I did in secret for a couple of months until I finally had enough writing to share it with my husband and with a couple of other friends and my sisters, and I realized shortly thereafter that I think I had a book. I knew I had a book, and I started editing and working on it from there. Well, can I say you should read Founder because it's good? Um, I'm not really one of those writers that writes to educate. I write to entertain. I like to tell a good story. So, yeah, I think you should read Founder if you enjoy a good adventure story, because that's really what it is. It's an adventure story. So I have a couple of projects going on right now. The Teen Book Scene, I don't know if you know that website, but they are currently organizing a blog tour for me to run in October and early November. I'm a little excited about that simply because I'm using a lot of Marian's journals and newspaper articles from the 40s to sort of put together something a little different from your typical blog tour. I'm also frantically writing the sequel to Founder right now. It is called Heritage, and it has a little bit of a different locale this time. I traveled to northern Sweden to a little town called Kiruna at the beginning of this year. It's where they have the Ice Hotel. Absolutely beautiful, beautiful, beautiful town, and Heritage is going to be based in that town. So that's what I'm working on right now. So my favorite books as a child were these ones. They're the Laura Ingalls Wilder Little House on the Prairie books. Um, when I became an adult, started having children, I went out and purchased the entire set for my own children and started reading to them and have been excited about doing that. So my favorite books as a teenager are actually the books by Ellen Montgomery. They still remain some of my favorite books, I think because her descriptive passages are so beautiful, and I've always appreciated authors that were able to describe their surroundings so beautifully. Um, she's well known. She's a well-known Canadian author and well known for her Anne of Green Gables books, which are based on Prince Edward Island, PEI. My favorite one of her books is actually one of her lesser-known works. It's this one, The Blue Castle. As you can tell, the cover's not doing so hot. I've actually read the cover off of two other books. Yeah. So if you've read Founder and you've read The Blue Castle, you'll notice similarities between her main character, Valancy, and my main character, Marta. This really inspired some of the characteristics of Marta. Okay, so sorry I have a cough drop in my mouth now. I have a little bit of a cold, so I didn't want to be coughing during this interview. Ooh, so this is kind of a tough question. I've read a lot of good books this year. Um, I think I'll go with one of my favorite authors, Jasper Fforde. He's a Welsh author. He released a new book this year in the Thursday Next series, and I actually lent it out. So this is the first book in that series, The Heir Affair, and the newest one is One of Our Thursdays is Missing. Came out this year. Love that book. I think he's just such a clever writer. He also released last year a middle grade book, which was quite the departure from his normal works, called The Last Dragon Slayer. I had an argument in the London Heathrow airport at the beginning of this year with with a bookseller who couldn't quite believe that an American girl would have such a vast knowledge of the Ford universe as I did. Anyway, had a hard time tracking down a copy of that one, but it was very good, and I highly recommend checking that out, The Last Dragon Slayer. So this is probably one of the harder questions that Megan sent me, simply because I'm very religious, and so my initial thought was to answer this question with a religious book, but instead I think I'm going to talk about another one of my favorite authors as a child, which was Roald Dahl, and he's famous for Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Mr. Willy Wonka. I think as a child you have a tendency to take adults for face value, and you sort of believe everything that they have to say. And not Willy Wonka, but Roald Dahl and his writing, especially The Witches, really taught me that adults aren't always as nice as they may seem. And so I think he gave me the ability to be a little leery of strangers, which is actually a pretty good thing. It's really hard to recommend one book to a large group of people, simply because everyone has such different reading styles and tastes in literature. So I think what I'd like to say instead is that you should always be willing to try something different, maybe outside of your normal reading comfort zone. 15 years ago, I doubt very many people would have said that they would have enjoyed a book about witches, and then look how popular Harry Potter has become. I know that for a long time I said I didn't like sci-fi, and I absolutely adore Ender's Game, and there are other science fiction books that I have read since that one where I've realized that I actually do like science fiction as a genre. So I try not to make those kind of generalizations. 3 years ago, I probably would have never read someone who wasn't traditionally published, and now I'm one of them. So, don't let other people tell you what to read, and don't be so narrow-minded that you can't open yourself up to different possibilities and different genres and different types of books. And I guess that's what I would recommend. So I just want to say thank you to Megan for giving me the opportunity to appear on her blog. As an indie author, we don't have very many marketing strategies really available to us, and so I'm just always happy to have such a warm reception, and Megan really gave me that warm reception, and I'm really, really, really grateful to her. I know that blogging can be a full-time job, and there's really no compensation for it besides a free book here and there, and the comments that other people leave, on your blog posts and things. So thank you so much, and if you'd like to check out Founder, my book, you can see my website at www.lmlong.com, and you can also purchase my book on Amazon as a paperback or on any e-reader as an e-reader copy. And thank you again for having me, and I hope you enjoy.